ShiftLeft CORE is our application security platform that performs static analysis on vulnerabilities in custom code, CVEs and dependencies, and secrets. And it does all of this in a single analysis, which is important for being able to show attackability in custom code and open source findings. And it does this by performing a single scan. So it's not just a single pane of glass. It's not just a UI that takes feeds from different siloed tools. It's a unified analysis that's able to cross-reference custom and open source findings. It integrates easily into your CI/CD, so you can automate those early, frequent, and repeatable scans. It's software as a service and completely self-serve, so you can go to shiftleft.io/register and sign up for a free account, and then you can set up one of the demo apps that we have there that are available and start trying out the tool. And importantly, it does not send your source code to the cloud. So because of the way it scans, it creates an intermediary representation, and then it sends that representation for analysis. So feel free to go ahead and scan your own apps with the tool. Now, I mentioned a word just a minute ago. The word was attackability, and it's a key concept in ShiftLeft CORE, and it's something I'm going to talk about again. So it's worth taking a moment to define that clearly. So attackable is short for attacker reachable. So it's a kind of reachability, but in the sense that attackable and reachable are used in AppSec, attackable goes further to prove risk. So reachability as a concept is used in technical fields like networking or graph analysis. In networking, if you're asking whether or not one device is reachable by another device, you're basically asking if the one device can communicate with that other device. If that's the case, then that device is reachable. When it's used in AppSec, we're typically referring to the open source dependencies. So when a vendor says that they can tell whether or not an open source dependency is reachable, typically what they're saying is whether or not that dependency is reachable by the application, or can we see a call graph between the application and that dependency. So that's the first step. That basically tells us whether or not the application is actually using the dependency. But it doesn't answer the question that we're asking, and it doesn't answer the question that we need an answer to. So as AppSec, what we need to know is whether or not that dependency and the CVEs, the known vulnerabilities within that dependency, whether or not they actually pose a risk to our application. And that's where attacker reachability comes in. With attacker reachability, we're asking whether or not an attacker working from the surface of the application is able to reach the vulnerabilities in that dependency. In other words, can we see the evidence of a path through the code or a data flow that shows that a malicious user can send information through the application in order to test, discover, and then exploit the known vulnerabilities in that dependency? And so that's where attacker reachability comes in. And in order to be able to see this, the tool needs to have a holistic view of custom code and open source dependencies. And this is something that ShiftLeft CORE excels at. And an added kicker, the reason we're spending time talking about this, is that it turns out of all the CVEs that a software composition analysis scan sends your way, in a typical application, only a small percentage of them are actually reachable to attackers. So it's typically, we've seen among our customers less than 10%. It's actually a good deal less than 10%. It's more around 5%. So it turns out that when developers are using open source in building applications, they're not making all those inputs available to just anybody who comes in and uses the application. Developers are sanitizing paths that reach those dependencies. And in some cases, those paths the dependencies are accepting inputs that are trusted and completely internal to the application. But to see that, you need to be able to see the code. And so why is a company named ShiftLeft talking so much about attackability? Well, it's because DevSecOps is about the right information reaching the right people at the right time. So with attackability, your devs see custom code and open source findings in the context of their code. They see those findings while that code is still fresh in their mind. Your AppSec team is dealing with a lot fewer false positives, and they're getting that continuous and early awareness of risk as it's getting ready to merge with your main branch. And if you're in DevOps, this is the kind of automation and tooling that you're looking for. When the right information reaches team members at a time that they can act on it, that's when that kind of productivity flywheel starts moving, where the process can kind of motivate itself. And this is how application security as a process can go from being that late, slow, out-of-band blocker to being an integrated part of DevOps. It's that holistic view of modern code, getting to your AppSec and your devs as early as every pull request while the code is still fresh in your devs' minds so they can make those fixes more efficiently.